welcome back for another deep dive. You know how we do it here. We take one of the most interesting things you sent us and we really get into it. Today we're talking all things Elon Musk.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And specifically, there was this really interesting article you sent over that looks at it calls it his empire. So I guess that's what we're calling it.
An empire.
Yeah, his empire. And, Musk is always in the headlines for one reason or another. But what I really appreciated about this article was it kind of went beyond the surface level stuff.
Right.
And took a deeper look at the sort of the underlying financial and operational realities of these businesses.
Right.
Especially Tesla, which is probably the biggest, most well-known piece of this empire.
Yeah, definitely.
So, as always, we're not just going to summarize the article. We're going to kind of analyze it, look for the most crucial insights, the key takeaways, the things that you should really know and understand about this whole situation.
Yeah.
So I guess where we should start is kind of what's the central argument? What's the main thesis that this article is putting forward?
Well, one of the most striking things, at least to me, was the argument that Tesla's, extremely high valuation might not be entirely based on traditional, financial health.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the article actually uses the term financial cult.
Whoa. Yeah.
It quotes one expert who basically says that this incredible stock price is driven more by kind of a belief, a powerful belief in the future potential of the company, rather than its current revenue or profits.
Okay, so it's not so much about how many cars they're selling today or how much money they're making today. It's more about what investors believe Tesla will become in the future.
Yeah, things like AI breakthroughs, colonizing Mars, that self-driving technology that everyone's been waiting for.
Right, right.
And the article even uses this analogy. It compares investor behavior to like a venture capital fund.
Oh, that's interesting.
Where you invest in all these high-risk startups, knowing that most of them will fail.
Right.
But hoping that one or two will deliver those massive returns.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it's suggesting that some investors are approaching Tesla with kind of that same mindset, betting that one of these big future projects,
like the moonshot ideas.
Yeah, the moonshot ideas.
Yeah.
Will really pay off and sort of overshadow any current shortcomings in their core business.
And they do mention that even after a significant drop, Tesla's stock price is still pretty high.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's still very elevated.
Yeah.
And that kind of indicates that a lot of that future expectation is still baked in.
Right. So a lot of people are still really banking on these future possibilities.
Exactly.
But then the article kind of shifts gears a little bit and starts talking about what it calls cracks in Tesla's core business.
Yeah.
The car business. And they point to things like a decline in their automotive revenue and profit margins.
Yeah, and for a company that's been around for over 2 decades.
Right. They're not exactly a startup anymore.
No, they're not. You'd expect to see more of a consistent and robust generation of free cash flow.
Right.
And that's one of the things that the article kind of raises questions about.
Okay, so how do you interpret that?
Well, to me, it raises the question of if the fundamental business of making and selling cars isn't as strong as it maybe once appeared.
Right.
Does that then put more pressure on these future bets?
Do they need those moonshots to really work out if the core business is...
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Because, if you're not generating as much cash from your core operations, it becomes harder to fund those really ambitious and often very expensive projects.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and you might become more reliant on external investment, which, can be difficult to secure if your core metrics are weakening.
Right.
And then on top of that, the article also talks about these price cuts that Tesla's been doing.
Yeah, I've seen that in the news.
And while those price cuts can certainly boost sales in the short term.
Yeah, make the cars more affordable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It can also potentially erode the brand's premium image.
Yeah.
It might signal that demand isn't as strong as it once was, and they need to lower prices to stay competitive.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah. And then there's this kind of interesting shift in how Elon Musk himself is talking about Tesla.
Yeah, I've noticed that too.
He's increasingly framing it as an AI company.
More than a car company.
Yeah, more than just a car company.
Right.
And the article kind of seems to view this with a bit of skepticism. Is this a genuine evolution of the business? Or is it more about, maintaining that investor enthusiasm and kind of shifting the focus away from the challenges in the car market.
Right, yeah. Is this really an AI company or is this just really good marketing?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And it's tough to say, right?
It is tough to say, and I
Yeah.
think that's one of the things that the article really wants you to,
To consider.
yeah, is this real? Are these actual, like, AI breakthroughs happening, or is this more about, playing into the excitement around AI to keep that valuation high?
Okay, so we've talked a lot about Tesla,
Yeah.
but, this article doesn't just focus on Tesla.
Right.
It also looks at some of Elon Musk's other ventures.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, well, it's not all good news there either.
Yeah. Not all rosy, no.
So Solar City, which Tesla acquired, they describe it as having atrophied.
Yeah.
Then there's the Boring Company, which hasn't really demonstrated clear and substantial revenue streams, at least not according to this article.
Right. Right.
And then, Neuralink, which is still very much in the kind of the speculative stage.
Yeah. Lots of potential, but not really.
Not a lot of concrete results yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, of course, there's X, formerly Twitter,
Oh, yeah.
which has reportedly seen both an economic decline
Yeah.
and kind of a cultural decline under Musk's leadership.
I think that's been pretty well documented.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a mixed bag, right?
It is a mixed bag. Yeah.
Like you have this incredibly valuable company in Tesla, but
Right.
then a lot of these other ventures that haven't quite reached that same level of success.
Right. It really kind of highlights the difficulty of taking these really ambitious visions and actually translating them into profitable and sustainable businesses.
Yeah.
It's not easy to do that across such a wide range of industries.
Right.
Each one has its own challenges and complexities.
But the article does highlight SpaceX and Starlink as kind of potential bright spots.
Yeah, they seem to be doing well.
Yeah, SpaceX has secured something like $12 billion in funding.
Huge amount.
Yeah, a huge amount.
Yeah.
And they're rumored to be making around $12 billion in annual revenue.
Wow.
Although the article is careful to point out that revenue is not the same as profit.
Right.
So
Yeah, you got to pay the bills first.
Exactly. And then Starlink is growing,
Yeah.
but it's facing a lot of regulatory and geopolitical challenges.
Yeah, trying to operate a global satellite internet network
Yeah.
is not without its hurdles.
Right. You're dealing with a lot of different governments, a lot of different
Absolutely.
interests. So what do you think? I mean, what's the kind of the main takeaway for our listener when it comes to SpaceX and Starlink?
I think with SpaceX, it's a more tangible success story,
Mm-hmm.
right? They have actual revenue. They've achieved some, incredible technological feats.
Right. Landing rockets and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But with Starlink, I think the key takeaway is that global expansion isn't a guarantee.
Right.
They have to navigate all these different regulatory environments, all these geopolitical tensions, and that could significantly impact their growth and profitability in the long run.
Yeah. And then the article brings up another really crucial point, and that is Elon Musk's own political involvement.
Right.
It suggests that his alignment with certain political figures might be creating some complications,
Yeah.
potentially affecting things like government contracts
Oh, wow.
and international business, both for SpaceX and Starlink.
That's huge.
Yeah, and it could have some really, really serious consequences.
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, government contracts can be a significant source of revenue for these companies.
Right.
So anything that could jeopardize those contracts
Hmm.
is a major concern. And the article even mentions that, back when Trump was elected, Tesla's stock actually surged.
Oh, interesting.
So, there was this perception that maybe his political alignment at that time was beneficial for Tesla.
Right. But things have changed since then.
They definitely have, yeah.
And it seems like the political landscape is a lot more complex now.
Much more.
Yeah, and potentially more risky for these businesses.
Yeah, I think that's a really important takeaway for your listeners.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not just about what's happening inside these companies. It's about the external factors, the political climate, the regulatory environment. All of these things can have a huge impact.
Right. And speaking of the regulatory environment,
Oh, yeah.
the article goes into some detail about all the investigations that Tesla is currently facing.
Oh, man. Yeah.
We're talking SEC probes, Department of Justice scrutiny,
Right.
and it's all related to claims about their self-driving technology, potential misuse of funds, and even vehicle safety.
Yeah, a lot of different areas.
Yeah, and that kind of regulatory attention, I mean, that's not good for any business.
No, definitely not. I mean, you've got legal battles, potential fines, not to mention the damage to your reputation. All of that can really hurt a company's financial performance and make it harder to grow and succeed in the future.
Right. And the fact that these investigations are looking at so many different aspects of Tesla's
Yeah,
operations.
it's not just one thing.
Yeah. I mean, it suggests that there could be some pretty serious problems.
Yeah, potential.
Yeah. And then there's the sales data.
Oh, yeah, the numbers.
Yeah. And the article presents some pretty startling figures about Tesla's sales in kind of key global markets.
Yeah, weren't they down in a lot of places?
Yeah, they're down 40% in Europe, 49% in China,
Wow.
70% in Australia, and even 11% in the United States.
So not just a little bit.
Yeah, these are not small declines.
No, they're significant.
And it's happening at a time when the global electric vehicle market is actually growing.
Right, so they're losing market share,
Yeah, it's not just that they're selling fewer cars, it's that their competitors are selling a lot more.
especially in China.
Yeah, especially in China, they specifically mentioned BYD.
Yeah, I've heard they're doing really well.
Yeah, they seem to be kind of pulling ahead, both in terms of sales and technology.
Yeah, I think they're seen as having some of the most advanced and affordable electric vehicles on the market.
Right, and the article makes this really interesting point about how Tesla's brand image might be changing.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, it's becoming more politically polarized.
Right, it's not just about the cars anymore.
Yeah, and there was this statistic from a UK survey that really jumped out at me. It said that 70% of Tesla owners feel embarrassed.
Embarrassed. Wow.
Yeah, because of the association with Elon Musk.
That's pretty telling.
Yeah, and that's a huge shift, right?
It is. I mean, brand perception is so important, especially for a car company.
Yeah, and if a large portion of your customer base is starting to have negative feelings about the brand,
Yeah,
that's going to impact their buying decisions.
absolutely. And it could also make it harder to attract new customers.
Right, right. And the article does mention that Tesla has seen an increase in support from Republicans.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, but they also point out that Republicans as a whole tend to be less likely to buy electric vehicles.
Right, so it might not be enough to make up for the losses in other segments.
Yeah, it's a tricky situation.
It is. It really shows how complex the relationship between business, culture, and politics has become.
Yeah, and it's only getting more complex, it seems like.
Definitely.
So I guess bringing it back to the core issue here, the competitive landscape,
Yeah.
the article really emphasizes that Tesla is facing some serious competition.
Oh, yeah, and not just from traditional car companies anymore.
Right.
It's these new players, especially the Chinese automakers, that are really shaking things up.
And they're not just selling more cars.
No.
They're also seemingly ahead in some key technologies.
Yeah, things like charging speed and self-driving capabilities.
Yeah. And then the article brings up the cost of Tesla's full self-driving software,
Oh, right, that's expensive.
which they say can be as much as an entire BYD vehicle.
Yeah, that puts it in perspective.
Yeah, that's a pretty stark comparison.
It is, and I think it really highlights this shift that's happening.
Right.
You know, Tesla used to be seen as the undisputed leader in EV technology, but that's not necessarily the case anymore.
Right. The market is changing rapidly.
It is. It's becoming a lot more competitive, and I think consumers have a lot more choices now.
And amidst all this, the article points out the huge amount of government funding that Musk's companies have received.
Oh, yeah, that was a surprising figure.
Yeah, something like $38 billion
Wow,
at least.
that's a lot of money.
Yeah, and a big chunk of that, like $6.3 billion, came in just the last year alone.
Wow, so they're really reliant on government support.
Yeah, and the article makes this really important point that government funding can be, it can be really helpful for companies, especially in these innovative industries.
Right, it can help drive growth and create jobs.
Yeah, but it's also risky
Yeah,
because if the political winds change,
right.
you could see a big reduction in that funding.
Or even a complete cutoff.
Yeah, and that could be devastating for these companies.
Absolutely. I mean, they've built their businesses on the assumption that that funding will continue.
Right, and if it doesn't, they're going to have to make some major adjustments.
Yeah, potentially some very painful ones.
So, kind of stepping back and looking at the big picture here.
Yeah.
It seems like this article is arguing that Elon Musk's empire is at a crossroads.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah, despite his influence and Tesla's, incredibly high valuation,
Hmm.
there are some very real challenges that they need to address.
Definitely. I mean, they're facing increasing competition, declining sales, regulatory scrutiny, and this whole issue with their brand image becoming more politically charged.
And they're still very reliant on those future technological breakthroughs.
Right, those moonshots have to pan out.
Yeah, the self-driving, the AI, the the Mars colonization.
All of it, yeah.
All of it has to kind of come together.
Yeah,
And I think the central question that this article poses is, if Tesla's technological lead diminishes and investor confidence starts to wane,
right.
will hype be enough to sustain them?
Yeah, is belief enough to keep this whole thing going?
And that's a really interesting question.
It is. It really makes you think about, what drives success in the long run. Is it just about having a great story, or is it about having a solid business with, with real products and services that people want to buy?
Right. And I think this article is suggesting that it's probably a bit of both.
Yeah, you need both, I think.
Yeah.
You need the vision, the ambition, the ability to inspire people.
Yeah.
But you also need the execution, the ability to deliver on those promises.
And to adapt to a changing market.
Absolutely. The world is constantly evolving, and companies that can't keep up, well, they're going to fall behind.
So for you, our listener, I think this deep dive has given you a lot to think about.
I hope so.
Yeah, I mean, we've looked at how financial markets work, how they can be influenced by belief and future expectations.
Right.
But we've also seen how important it is to really pay attention to the underlying business fundamentals.
Yeah, the nuts and bolts.
Yeah, and to understand how the competitive landscape is shifting.
It's a complex world out there.
Yeah, it is. And for Elon Musk, I mean, he's got this incredible empire, but he's also facing some very real and very serious challenges.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out.
And I guess the question I would leave you with, our listener, is what do you think is the single biggest hurdle that Elon Musk needs to overcome to ensure the long-term success of his ventures?
Yeah, what's the key to making this whole thing work?
Yeah, and there's no easy answer.
No, it's a multifaceted problem.
Yeah, and it's something that, we're all going to be watching very closely.
I know, I will be.
Yeah, me too. So thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We encourage you to, keep exploring these topics.
Yeah, read more, do your own research.
Yeah, and to really think critically about, the factors that contribute to both the success and the challenges of these really influential companies in today's world.
Yeah, because it's a fascinating story.
Yeah, it is. And we'll see what the next chapter holds.
Absolutely. All right, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.